need to be like that.
Oh,
Right up on you like this. Talk.
check, check, check.
Yeah, you're good. Keep talking.
Test, test, test. Text. Check, check. Test.
Rolling.
So the visual is not like this is more. You do this more for audio, and the visual is a bonus.
Yeah, definitely. We are trying to use the 80-20 rule. 80% of your results and 20% of what you do. So I'm trying to do as much as I can with content. So yeah, the audio is SoundCloud based right now, and then we're going to hold on. That's good.
That's cool. That little mirror, so you can see the back. A flip out, whatever. Oh, too. So that's like a two-shot of both of them. Okay. Well, both of them.
All right, now we're back. Okay, now we're live, officially live, so I can see everything.
Okay, so we're
Good stuff.
everything.
So yeah, we were talking about content. Like it's so you ever the vlog is kind of like an inside to the studio. That's mainly video. I try to record one of those every day if I can. I've only done 2 this week because what I've started to realize is like you've got to edit them and put them out, and that takes time too.
Yeah.
So that's one part of it. And then I wanted to do the podcast because I'm a big fan of the podcast, one, and then also I don't think the conversations are being had in South Carolina. I don't, in general, and I know they're not being had in Columbia. Friends of mine who are in a band called Grand Republic, they just launched their first podcast, and they're doing one out of the Wig, and it's just audio. And they had their first episode, and I'll see those guys actually tonight to talk to them. So it's not happening. Nobody's having these podcasts about art, culture in Columbia at all. I mean,
Okay.
they're obviously talking about sports and politics for sure, and business, but they're not talking about any like the underground arts and music and film culture
And the
that's
long
going on.
the long format of this lets you actually have a conversation instead of just like a quick interview or I'm here talking about this thing I'm doing, trying to promote it.
Right,
It's like
exactly.
there's no agenda that we have to fulfill with it.
Yeah, well, that's the fun part about doing podcasts, and that's something in here, like working. I can only listen to so much music before I want to hear other things. So to listen to a 3-hour podcast here, it goes by like that for me. And also it's informative. It informs the other stuff that I'm working on. And that you're right. When you have like a dinner or anything like that, or even like at a party, you're trying to have a conversation, you're always going to interrupted. You never have a full conversation, really, truly in depth.
When we're talking here, and do you imagine a third party watching or listening, or do you have a conception of like who's paying attention to this?
No, not really.
I've listened and watched before, so I know it's not children, because you're not afraid to use R-rated language.
Yeah, Faith gives me a hard time about that. She's like, you never know who's been watching. Yeah,
but it's not kids. But is it artists? Is it audience? Who do you imagine? I guess either. But
yeah, I think it's adults for sure.
Okay.
I think it's adults. I don't.
But do you feel like it's practicing artists that are?
I hope.
That we're okay.
I hope. I'm going to have the next guest we're having is a musician, and then Michaela Pilar Brown, who I had an exhibition with at the beginning of the end of the summer. She's on residency, and she's coming back, and she's going to sit down too next. And then I've got some other people lined up. They haven't confirmed, but it's a wide range of people that I find interesting in Columbia and outside of Columbia that are going to hopefully be part of this and compile a set of conversations that will inform, what's happening. Because I don't think we get a lot of press or recognition in South Carolina about what's going on.
It's cool because I grew up in Columbia, and I guess when I left, well, when I went off to college, it would not have crossed my mind that I would ever be like in Columbia talking about arts and culture.
Yeah.
It would have been more like maybe if I'm really successful, I'll be talking about, well, business or politics or sports.
Sure. I think that was honestly, one of the depressing things about moving back to Columbia for me. Like,
Uh-huh.
I was terrified that there would be no outlet for my creative process, or I was terrified of never finding a tribe again.
Hmm.
And I think now, just 9 years in now, back in Columbia, 9 years, I'm just feeling comfortable with that possibility and
Yeah.
those people around me. So yeah, it's interesting what's happening right now, and also too the format, the media itself lends itself to an exposure route that maybe we would have before.
Yeah.
The capabilities of our phones now are it's absolutely ridiculous what we can do on our phone, both for production value and then also just how how fast it goes.
Yeah.
You mentioned one of our texts about having it live. That's definitely on the back burner. I want to have it, live like you when I was growing up. I like to listen to radio shows when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So to have that possibility is really, really great too.
Did you listen to Woody and Leo, the
Woody and-
Wyndham brothers?
Yes. Yes.
In
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
80s?
Absolutely.
That's a true test of somebody's from Columbia, at least in the 80s. It's like,
WCOS, right?
no, they were WNOK.
Was that WNOK?
I think they eventually
That's it.
showed up on WCOS. That was the country station.
Yeah, that was a country station.
NOK was the top 40
Top
station.
40. Okay. Yeah. All right. That was like a flip flop between that and what's it? WMHK.
Well, that was the Christian
That was
station.
those are the three staples in my house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, those are the three.
that
WMHK
makes
was my
sense.
dad. And
What
then-
about 560 WVOC, the sports talk? And
No, I'm not. No, those were uncles and cousins that got into
Okay.
that. So, like when I was a kid and we go to football games, that was always on. Sure, that was.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was always on. Yeah, absolutely. So, just to kind of recap, rewind a little bit. We're here with Chris White, who's an independent filmmaker from Greenville. He's originally from Columbia, South Carolina. He's made several films, feature films, Taken In, Get Better, Cinema Purgatorio, and Unbecoming. He's here with us today talking about film, and we're going to try to delve into the idea of what it means to be a hobbyist and professional. Chris, how many years has it been since you stepped into the full-time?
well, I did a lot of things. Like I guess my career or the job that when I was growing up, being from here, and I was a creative guy, it seemed like the thing that people pointed me towards was, I mean, as I became an adult and I got to make a living, was towards advertising. So I did advertising marketing for a long time. But then I kind of burned out on that around 2003, 2004, somewhere in there, and I became a school teacher. So I was a high school drama and film teacher in Greenville County until like the fall of 2009, and I left that job and just decided, and I haven't had a real job since then. The goal was to find a way to go pro as a filmmaker, and I've had varying levels of success with that, and I'm still working on that. So to your thing about the hobbyists and pro, I see those two things in a little bit of conflict, or I see them as like they're key identifiers for me, just personally. Like I think they're two different things, and I think they're blurred a lot. So, but I'm trying to be pro. I think I am. I'm going pro. That's my idea.
Going pro. What's that? I'm going the distance. Is that Weezer? Is that right?
No,
is that
but
right?
that was about the time Weezer came out. I don't know.
Going the distance. Who
I
is
actually
that?
started listening to a lot more
Anyway,
90s music
I digress.
recently.
So you have made how many films in the last 9 years?
Maybe a dozen short films and probably 5 that I would call features, and I've written for films that are features, and I've written for and produced and directed for a web series called Star Trek Continues. I mean, so in the since the past 8 or 9 years, I don't know. Look me up on IMDb.
Okay, we'll do
a lot
that.
of that
Right.
stuff is on there.
Why film, Chris? Why film? What do you? I know a lot about your background. Can you talk about what led you in that direction?
I remember being in 8th grade, and my family was on vacation, and we stopped somewhere to get gas or something, and I was in this little store, and I saw this. It was like a magazine, but it was about the making of the behind the scenes of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, the second Indiana Jones movie, and I think I had just seen the movie, or maybe I had just seen it, and I asked my parents if I could get it. Yes, you can get it. So in that car ride, I'm like just reading this. Something just clicked that there are people, there are grown-ups who, for their job, they do this. I'd always been kind of like into television stations.
Sure.
So I'm 48. I was born in 1970. So as I started entering school mid-70s, and I remember going to a TV station in kindergarten one time because our class was on TV.
Okay.
And then I also remember.
Is that WIS?
No, that was when I lived in Chattanooga. But
Okay.
I did go to WOLO when I was in second grade. We had a Jerry Lewis, an MDA backyard it's like a fundraiser, a carnival backyard. These were big things that happened in the 70s a lot. And
I remember, yeah. Totally remember, yeah.
And so we did one. I grew up in Harbison, the subdivision of Harbison, and so me and my friends, we went to the TV station, and we made we were on TV, and I was on Mr. Knows It one time growing up. So TV stations, and also in 8th grade about the same time, at school we did a tour where we went to ETV, the old ETV station. So again, walking around production places, realizing, hey, people do this, it just all started to click to me like I wanted to work in that world of television and film. And then I started being interested in acting, which was really more just wanting to be funny, and so acting kind of came after that too.
So obviously, being funny, Saturday Night Live was that kind of live action.
Oh yeah, same moment, 1984. This season, the one season that Martin Short and Billy Crystal and Christopher Guest from SNL was it was everything I was into.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So talk about some other. You said Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom as a kid, but what are some other films that kind of burned in your brain you always go back to?
Well, Star Wars, like many people in my generation, but I realized that I used to get the cards, the Star Wars cards.
Yeah, the
trading cards.
Yeah, trading cards, right.
And I realized those are movie frames. So I had a record that had the story of Star Wars, so I'd listen to that record, but I'd also kind of look through the cards, like I'd watch the movie. It's before, videotapes were ubiquitous, so I kind of look at those, and I feel like that started teaching me about framing and what films look like, the cards. Wow. And then I had the figures, and then they became like actors. So, I mean, playing with Star Wars figures and Star Wars cards became like making movies to me. And I didn't process that until grown up, but as a kid, it never occurred to me that's what I was doing until about 8th or 9th grade, and I was desperate to get video cameras and try to make
a story.
Yeah, make things. Yeah.
That's interesting you said that, because I did a similar thing, but I looked at Star Wars, especially the soundtrack cover, the album cover, where you had the with the pictures on the inside. That's what. But so and I did have those cards, but I never quite do that. But I did with comic books while listening to the music. But
I didn't get into comic books, but my understanding is a lot of people that were into comic books that had the same. It was a similar effect. We were still looking at pictures as story and assigning meaning to the images.
Okay, Star Wars. So what else? Can you give us a lineage
the first
as you grow?
The first art movie, and I don't know, I thought of it, but a movie that I saw and I was like, this means something more than just the plot, maybe. Like there's meaning to this movie. I saw when I was 11 or 12. It was Chariots of Fire, which was a really underdog indie movie when it came out in 1981, and went on and just won the Academy Awards in the early 1982. But that movie, to me, there were two plots. One was about a very religious guy who was a runner, and the other guy who was a not so religious. He was Jewish, and I think his religion was a little bit to play with, but he was just a competitor. He wanted to win, and it was kind of slow moving. It wasn't like maybe what kids would have watched, but I think because it had a Christian element to it, my parents were like knew that and were okay with me watching it. I mean, it didn't have any offensive content, I don't think, but so I watched it, but I know now, and I've watched it. I think that's a great movie, and
yeah, absolutely, me too.
It was beautiful, and it was meaningful, and it was loaded with meaning, and so suddenly those things start mattering to me, and that really, when I started getting more into music, I was always coming at things like when I started getting music in high school, like really getting into understanding music. It was always like, what's behind this? What is the artist trying to accomplish here? What are they saying? What does it mean? I didn't have a lot of. I wasn't a big fan of just kind of flippant, dumb, fun music. I was more into very sincere, very profundity was important to me. Like, what does this mean? What are they saying? All right, and I still had the, I could still have the kind of the rage, the anger, if that was in the music, or the,
the drama,
the drama of it. But I also wanted it to mean something, or I wanted to know what they meant.
Right.
And again, like I liked Michael Jackson and Huey Lewis and things like that in the 80s, but they didn't mean anything to me. When music started meaning something to me, it was because the artists were meaning something.
Yeah, that was my intro into Chariots of Fire, was the soundtrack. My parents had that on vinyl that we listened to.
I have it on vinyl now.
For forever when I was a kid, and before I even saw it. I didn't even get a chance to see it until it was on VHS, and we could rent it.
Yeah.
But I remember those. I don't remember it being slow, but I remember sticking in. The thing that kept me in trance was the soundtrack, because it was these moments of just quiet, no sound, and then these triumphant moments where it just everything comes alive, and the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and you become part of the crowd. It was really one of those great moments.
That record, the A side, is a completely uninterrupted, just piece of composition that Vangelis does. Like the theme song really is on the B side that everybody knows from Chariots of Fire.
Sure.
But listening to that is a great listen. It is,
absolutely. I have it on my phone right now.
Yeah,
we could listen to it. Yeah, absolutely great stuff. What else? What's another one?
So then this movie really completely rocked my world when I got to college. I went to college in Greenville at Furman, and I majored in theater or drama. And but Woody Allen's Crimes and Misdemeanors is still in my top 5 movies ever. It was funny. It was deeply meaningful. I knew of Woody Allen before that, and I knew that I liked him, that he was funny and cool, and I liked The Purple Rose of Cairo was a movie I'd seen in high school. Broadway Danny Rose is one of my favorite movies ever. As I came through college, I got into Annie Hall in Manhattan and the other Woody Allens, but that one just put me flat on my back. And about at the same time, I saw a movie by a filmmaker named Whit Stillman, who was from New York, but his producer, Peter Wentworth, was from South Carolina. And I saw that movie, Metropolitan, in 1990, and that was it. So Metropolitan, Woody Allen's movies were like, okay, that's entertaining. That's what I want to do. If I could ever make something that was as thoroughly satisfying as Crimes and Misdemeanors, that'd be great. And look, Whit Stillman just made this movie called Metropolitan that I could do that. I could be on a track to do that. It was a little Woody Allen, but it was more like a Woody Allen, John Hughes Woody Allen movie. Metropolitan, though.
Were you saying to yourself at that time, I could or I am? Or did you, because one of the things I always talk about when people are asking, about why, how I played football and why I didn't do so and
Yeah.
so. It's like the option was just never presented to me. Was that something that did you? The reason I asked, was the option there? Or did you even like I can imagine like getting out of Greenville and going do that, or was it I could do that, or I'm going to do that?
I was.
How did you come to
I
terms with
was.
that?
The goal at that time. I was really immersed in acting at Furman as a drama major, and I was a part of an improv sketch comedy troupe. So if you'd asked me I would have said, look, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go be on Saturday Night Live as a cast member, and from there I'm going to leverage my success on SNL and turn that into an acting career, which I'm going to leverage into a writing directing career. So yes, that was the plan.
Gotcha.
Like if we had been hanging out and I was 19 or 20 years old, I would have been like, no, I'm definitely going to be on Saturday Night Live. So I was pretty ambitious for that. I didn't really. I remember my senior year trying to get a. I went to see Sally Fitzgerald, who was kind of the keeper of Flannery O'Connor, as a Southern novelist that I love, and she spoke at Furman. Sally Fitzgerald did. Flannery O'Connor had passed away, but I remember going up to Sally Fitzgerald after her talk and saying, Miss Fitzgerald, I would like to make a adaptation of one of Flannery's short stories as a film. And she said, well, you must then. And I said, yes, I must. And she goes, I want you to write to this gentleman in New York City and tell him what you intend to do, and tell him we spoke, and he will clear it for you to make. And like, I mean, Flannery O'Connor, like, she told me I could do it. So I wrote this guy a letter, and I soon got a letter back and said, no, you will never do this. This must not happen. And I was just like, I thought I was in trouble, so I didn't do anything. But now I realize I should have just made the movie. Like, who cares? It wouldn't have been good at all, but I would love to see that movie now. Like, whatever my 21-year-old ambitions would have taken me with that. And Sally Fitzgerald was so sweet about it. Like, yes, you must do this. Okay. So I guess there was like a disconnect in the communication between the big bosses in New York. But
people that control the money.
yeah.
So so that would be path to being a pro.
Well, and let me say this too. There were two moments when I was in high school. I was a junior in high school, and I went to South Carolina Governor's School for the Arts for the summer in theater. So that was fueling some of my acting. Like, I thought I could do it because I went there, did that, had success doing that, came back. Was, the kind of success that I think you had in your junior year of high school, I really did have in my senior year of high school as an actor in doing theater at Irmo. And then when I went to college, after my junior year of college, I spent the summer in New York studying acting at HB Studios, which is a professional acting with an Oscar-nominated acting teacher, William Hickey. People from Second City were my teacher. Like, I was living in New York, studying acting every day, getting affirmation and acclaim for it. Like, people saying, "You're good. You can do this." So, my plan to do like SNL or whatever, that wasn't coming out of nowhere. It was just, I was meeting with success and being encouraged in that direction, I guess. Okay. So it wasn't just I was just stuck in South Carolina and couldn't get out of here and didn't. I had opportunities that
informed some passion or some ambition.
And I remember being at Governor's School, them telling us, they were from North Carolina School of the Arts, the teachers that were teaching that program at the time. It was a summer program only then. And I remember them telling us that we needed to leave South Carolina if we were serious about being actors. Oh, okay. And I was kind of offended by that. As a kid, I was like, man, I mean, what if the governor knows that they're telling us to leave? I kind of thought the point of this school was like to give us training so we could do it here. But the teachers were like absolutely unblinkingly advocating, get out of this state. You can come to North Carolina School of the Arts for college, they would say, but really, if you're going to be a pro, you got to get out of here.
And so, how did that advice manifest itself later?
Well, at first, I was I was always a little. I've never just done what people told me to do, so that became a little bit of a challenge. Oh, really? Well, I'm not going to do that. Like so. If you even now, if you just said, I don't know, this is the best beer I've ever drank. Drink this beer. Tell me that's not the best beer I've ever drank. You've ever drank. Out of politeness to you, I would drink it and go, yeah, oh man, that's really good. But I would kind of inside, I'd be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's not the best beer ever.
I'll keep that in
Now,
mind.
now, if it was the best beer ever, I'd be like, all right, you win, But like, I was a little bit contrary to people, uh, you know, um, and that's not always served me well.
You want to elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, you can't. I mean, in any aspect of life, not just work. I mean, if you're kind of a contrary person, if somebody says, "Please do this," if your boss says, "I need you to do this," and you're like, "I'm not going to do it that way," well, you might not keep that job very long.
Yeah, trust me, I know that very well, very well. So let's go. Just rewind a little bit. So Furman, Woody Allen. What's next? What happens next? What movie wise?
I got a job
career-wise?
offer before college. Okay, so at the end of college, I was going on all these auditions to try to get summer acting work, and I made it to the very last rounds of interviews and auditions to be at a very prestigious theater program post college at the Actors Theater of Louisville, which has an intern program that's very important and great. I went to Louisville. I did the auditions, the unified auditions. Then I went to Louisville, got down to the end, and they didn't pick me. And I was kind of like, oh man, it was disappointing. That was a good place to be. That would have been a nice, good step. And I got a call from a person who had been my youth minister in high school. He had a different job. He was in Texas, and he said, I work for this company, and they want to send like actors around to schools. Like we want to send like actors to schools all over the country, playing historical figures. Do you know how to do that? I was just on the phone one day, and I was like, no. What are you talking about? And he's like, it's like in a school, and an actor comes in like George Washington, and he gives you a talk. He like tells you about his life, and he's like, he was working for a company that made animated videos, and they were selling them to schools, and there was this desire to send the living history actors into schools, and it was literally all over the country. We want them everywhere, and would you want to do that? And I said, well, I might want to help you script it. Would you want to be an actor? Would you want to, and he was very insistent, and he flew to Greenville from Texas and took me to dinner and said, I think you need to run the whole program. I was like 21 at the time, 22. And I said, he offered me a salary, benefits. You'll move to Dallas, and you'll just help us figure this out. I don't know how to do it. So I took that job. I moved to Dallas, and that's literally what happened for the next 2 years. I went all over the country and found actors and taught them to be history people. Now, and I trained with historical reenactors. The George Washington of Mount Vernon, he was in Philadelphia. I went to Philadelphia to train with this guy. One of the programs we did was putting living history, like improv style actors in all the Six Flags theme parks. So I did that. And with that, I went to Second City in Chicago and got a Second City like main stage group to work at the Chicago Six Flags that summer. So I just used it. Like I went to New York and Boston and Los Angeles for the first time. And
how long was this? How long were you doing this?
I did it for 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, until they decided that that had run its course. Like they didn't want to do actors anymore to promote these videos. And I had no interest in being in marketing. I mean, if I'd said, "Oh, can I just still work in the marketing part?" It didn't even occur to me. So
Right.
I was just laid off from the job. I had to wear suits to the office. So I had suits. So I went to Dillard's department store and got a job. The day I was laid off, I just went to the Dillard's near my apartment, and I was just like, I have suits and I want it to be air conditioned. So I went and I sold ties and shirts for about 6 months. But in the meantime, I was also doing a lot of theater in Dallas.
Okay.
I mean, the cool, like that was the first. I met like these guys that were making like guy theater in Dallas, and just even my style as a director now is a large part based on the guys I made theater with in Dallas in the early '90s. Just it was gritty and it mattered, and you know it was athletic the way we did theater and the way these people I fell in with. Still was doing a little improv comedy there, but eventually what happened is this. I decided. So, I remember sending. I was a big fan. They just recently released the first season of the original Conan O'Brien show on NBC when he replaced Letterman, and I watched it. Like probably the first year, I watched every episode. You know, I was so excited that this young guy was doing this, and I sent him material, trying to
Really?
yeah, and it got returned every time because that's you have to have an agent to submit.
Oh.
But anyway, I became kind of like into this thing. Like I need to be in South Carolina. An artist should be in his home, or he should go to his home. he should be of his place. Place is important. I had some very serious. I don't even really. I'm not even sure where those ideas came from. I wasn't reading a lot of art theory or something, but it became so like important to me to be from South Carolina, be from the South in general, be from South Carolina, to go to almost like go to Columbia, where I'd grown up, and just bam, be there. I need to be here, and so I did. I moved. My dad had a friend. They were selling some. They had kind of it was a serious business, but it was just kind of a fun business where they were selling USC Gamecock T-shirts. This would be about '94.
Okay.
And it was. They all said Gamecock Army, and they were just this thing. Gamecock. They were all these licensed things, and my dad was like, "Why don't you just come and you can just help this guy? We're just having fun, but why don't you come and like work for that and try to make that something and work on that? That would give you a little bit of a base, and then you could figure out what you're going to do. And from there, within 6 months, I convinced some people at my parents' church, which became my church when I moved back here, that they should give me some money to make a movie. And so in 1995, I released. In 1994, I made it, but I made a film called Night Divine. That was my first movie. Shot on film, running time about 58 minutes, 53 minutes, something in there.
What was that about?
It was about a couple. It was kind of a metaphor for the Christmas. The reason the church paid for it, because the church premiered it. Like they put it in a movie theater and showed it. It was like their Christmas, instead of doing like a Christmas, pageant or something. They just did this movie. So it was an actual story about a husband and wife who couldn't have a child, and they, with a lot of master shots, like my hero Woody Allen, and it's Christmas Eve, and the husband, they're kind of estranged because of this. They can't have a child, and the husband works at a Christmas tree stand.
Was this released in around Columbia? Was it more than church? Because I want to say I remember hearing something.
You might have heard about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I acted in it. I played the guy. I directed it. I wrote it. I produced it. I starred in it. It was my film school. And I hired, I had a good friend, Heidi Meltrutter. She's still around town. She's an awesome person. And she just kind of, looked at me and said, okay, well, we're going to make your movie. And, I had a little bit of money to do it. And she brought all these friends with her from her film school. And suddenly I was on a set making a movie and acting. and that my favorite director from Dallas, Steve Mahone, that really taught me how to direct anything, he came out, and he like was my right hand man. He kind of taught me how to direct movies while I was acting. So he's also directing me, but he would say things like, okay, so what they're doing, what check the gate means. You used to have to check the gate when you shot on film, which is just scanning the behind the lens, make sure there's no dust that's getting on them. And it's a constant thing. He'd tell me, explain what that was, or he'd say, ask your DP how you're cut, meaning like the frame.
How you're framed.
He'd kind of whisper it to me and say, ask her how you're cut. How am I cut? She said, you're about here, and he goes, see, so everything's here, so just keep all that acting right here. You don't have to do stuff. So it was this opportunity that so in that, Columbia served me well, because Columbia was a place where I was at least able to find, through Heidi, I was able to find collaborators to make a movie. I was able to find, through this church, some funding and like support. Like they got behind it. I mean, I had to. It wasn't the film. It wasn't a comedy. There was some comedy elements of it, but it wasn't like the film I wanted to make. But it was a film that they liked and they wanted me to make, and I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity, and there it was. And so by 95, 96, my focus was, okay, now
how can I make another one?
How do I make this happen?
How do I make another one?
Yeah.
How do I keep doing?
Yeah. And I will say that at the time, this was before there was ever this whole faith-based film thing that's like big now. Like churches make movies now. This is, that's probably like at least 10 years before, 15 years before churches were even thinking about making movies. This church was behind it and did that. And but I got a review of the movie. The movie was sent to kind of a Christian film gatekeeper of sorts. Mm-hmm. This publication called Movie Guide, and the guy's name is Ted Baer, and it got a little write-up and review, and it was a positive review of the movie. And Mr. Baer, Ted Baer, invited me to come to Atlanta and meet with him, because I was, that's how also, well, I'll tell you this first, then I'll tell you another. But I went to Atlanta. This had been 1996 or 1997, somewhere in there. And Mr. Baer, I met with him in his office, and he was like, do you want to make movies? I was like, yes, obviously. Do you want to make Christian movies? And I didn't even know what Christian movies meant. I knew I was a Christian, so I was like, well, I want to make art. So, if that, I guess that's okay if it's Christian.
And he was like, yeah, cool.
Yeah, and so he was like, well, you need to go. I'm the producers of Saved by the Bell are good friends of mine, and I could get you an unpaid internship on Saved by the Bell. You'd have to move to LA. You'd have to figure out a way to get a job and work. It's not paid. But I could get you on the set of Saved by the Bell. And I was just indignant.
How dare you not pay me? Is that what it was like?
No, it was like Saved by the Bell.
Oh.
That's like the worst show ever. I mean, come on. And I told my kids that recently. My daughter, Harriet, likes that show, ironically. She's like 18. She's like, retro. Dad, what? You didn't so go retro. to work That's on so Saved by the Bell? Yeah. I was like, no, because that was terrible. I don't want to be a part of that. So I kind of stiff-armed that opportunity. I did get to meet with, because of Night Divine, I got to go to San Antonio, Texas, and meet with one of my childhood heroes, Mr. John Schneider of the Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah.
And he was trying to I sent him the movie, he watched it, he wanted to bundle it with some catalog movie of his, and put it in Walmart's. And, or that was the idea. He was starting this distribution company. So I went and met with him. That was really heady, cool, that felt like Hollywood. And I came with a pitch for him for a movie for him to act in. I remember he said, it has to be minimal budget, $2 million for me to act in it, but You write the script, I'll read it. And um, we didn't end up doing the deal. I think what happened is he got cast in a show called Smallville,
Yeah.
and he played Superman's dad in that show. And he shelved the whole distribution company idea, whatever he was doing.
And by the time he got out of that, DVDs were in and all that stuff probably.
Yeah, I'd lost touch with him.
Yeah. And also what was happening at that time, if I recall correctly, around 90, probably 96 through probably 2000, the ability to make your own film and your own videos is becoming much more popular with computers, and so that was also changing how the industry was.
Yeah, Night Divine was offline edited on the first version of Avid.
Oh, okay.
So the first desktop serious professional system. So the film was transferred to tape, and the tape was digitized, and the cutting of the movie happened at a computer. And the editor's name is Dennis Miller.
Dennis Miller.
Not that Dennis Miller, but he was in Columbia and he had a production company, and he was awesome. I mean, even that, he taught me how to edit. You know, watching him edit Night Divine was just so alive. But here's the thing, Kendall. Here's where I think where are we?
You're good.
Okay, we're good. Okay, I didn't see it. Here's the thing. I think where Columbia. So we're talking about really a 3 to 4 year little piece where it seems like something can happen here. In fact, my next film that I'm in the funding process for, a film called Electric Jesus, the notion of that film, the very idea, the first inkling I had of that film was during this time when I was in Columbia. I was putting ideas on paper, and that was the first time I met Steve Taylor and talked to him on the phone about it. I remember that, just talking about this Christian rock band movie, Electric Jesus. But this is what happened. Like,
all right, freeze right there. Hold. Pause that 1 second. We gotta reset this computer. I have to do every 20 minutes on the camera. And then reset that. Square. So back to Electric Jesus and making these.
So that mid '90s, I lived in Columbia, was married, and around about the time my first child was born, late 1996 is when Gibson was born, my first daughter. 97. I know that it's the rigors of having a family that changes a lot of things.
Sure.
And then Whitaker came soon after that, Harriet soon. So right there in the mid to late 90s, or the late 90s, is when Columbia failed for me. And well, I don't want to put it that way. Columbia didn't fail me. But this is where being here and being devoted to being here, where it ran out of gas for me. Now, it could just be because I had kids and I was looking at myself differently and the idea of family and everything. But that's when that's the first moment I can remember thinking, oh, the way that I'm going to achieve these goals I have as an artist and a filmmaker is going to be, it just seemed like it made sense that I was just going to do like corporate video. And then it was like, you know what, I'm just going to do like, because ad agencies will hire me. Like I was working for an ad agency, and I made. They had a client. The ad agency I worked for had a big Baptist church in town was a client, and I just on a whim, like I just said, hey, I guess because I'd made that movie with that church, I was like, why don't you pitch them a movie? Like they were doing some building campaign or something, and I said, why don't you pitch them a movie for that? I made a movie for a church one time. Why don't you pitch? It'll be like a 30s, kind of like a gumshoe trying to solve a mystery kind of thing. They did. and they dumped tons of money. It was like a like precursor to a web series. It was like a 4-part like story. We had old cars and we had built sets, and it was all for this
Shot in here, Columbia.
Mm-hmm. It was here. It was. I wrote the script. I directed it, and then the client, the church, said, "You're going to be the actor in it." So like, I had this little run. Like I was playing the gumshoe, like that fedora and the whole thing, and it was like I had a moment where like, between 95 and 97, where
I was gonna.
I was like this guy in Colombia that made
you could do
movies.
this. It's going to happen. It's going. It's good. It's
yeah.
We're on launching pad.
Right, and then I just maybe because of family stuff. I'm not married to that wife now. I do have another wife now. I got divorced many years later. I think I just bought this idea that art and creativity and my contribution, my skills should be poured into marketing. That was the way I could get paid. That was the way I could, and afford to have a house and a car and take care of these kids.
I get it. Yeah.
And what I needed to do, and I regret that. I wish there'd been a mentor around that said, because honestly, Kendall, I think I would have rather been a barista at a coffee shop. Nothing against baristas, they're awesome. I'm just saying I'd rather have done that than be sitting around conference tables with executive level marketing people talking about the annual report we're going to design or all that. And I learned stuff doing that, and I had my own agency for a while. But that really just took me out of the game in a lot of ways. I don't think I was ever cynical about it, but it wasn't until 2002, 2003 when I started working on the documentary Bragging Rights that it even came back to me that
you missed it, or just that you met that. What
that
came back to you?
Possible. That it was even like some.
That's what I'm at.
Yeah, I should have moved. I tell this to people all the time. I told it to a kid a couple of weeks ago that called me and was asking me for advice about stuff, and I said, "Well, are you pro or is this a hobby?" And he said, "I'm pro. I want to work in movies." And I was like, "What are you doing in Greenville, South Carolina? You're talking to the only filmmaker that is at least close to closing a deal on an actual commercial film, like a movie theater movie that is shown all over the country and the world. I'm probably as close to anybody in Greenville, South Carolina, to actually closing a deal, an actual, tangible, real thing, not just a wish. And there are some nice people. There's a lot of people that are having fun together making movies, like people have fun together at community theaters making theater. But if you want to be a player, why are you here? And he was a smart guy, and he was like, "Well, why are you here?" And I said, "Because I'm 48 years old, and my 18-year-old just graduated from high school. So I'm only going to be here if it works for me in my career as a filmmaker, as a film producer. I'm not going to be here if it doesn't." So, and I would say the person I was talking to, I think he was 24, 25. I said, if you're 24, why are you here acting like you're
get out of
like
town.
you're going to make movies? This is not. I mean, you're an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Atlanta. Go there.
Go. Yeah.
So anyway.
No, I think that I want to comment on this because you had kids much earlier than I did, and now I am just past. And we'll get into this for you too, but you're talking about rather be a barista. I think especially the last 5 years for me being a public school teacher, I mean, literally nearly killed me. And I did everything I could to stay productive creatively, but it was incredibly difficult. And now that I have quit teaching and I'm doing this art thing, this art business, contemporary art, making my work, having a living, breathing studio, 40 plus hours a week. Faith and I have had those conversations that once the girls are out of high school, there's nothing keeping us here. And we were both at that point because we did things opposite. We lived in New York, then moved back and had kids, and now we're like, wait a minute, once the girl and what we're realizing is time's flying past. Our girls are 9 now; they'll be 10 next year. And
they're twins, right?
Yeah, twins, and it is, they're going to be out of high school in no time.
Yeah,
and Faith will be retired or at close retirement age, and then, when this art thing picks up, there's nothing keeping us here.
Yeah.
So I think that's, I think that you were saying about family, the responsibility of taking care of family. It's a noble thing to do, and I think that gives everybody meaning in their life, and it provides you with a certain perspective on your own mortality and your legacy as a human being. However, it makes you lose sight of other parts of yourself that we do.
Well, I was also, in the 2000s, I was going through separation and divorce, okay? And that made it even more important to be where the kids were.
Right.
Because in a divorce situation,
so it became
you don't
much
move.
more.
Yeah, I know
structured.
People that I'm going to go do this thing, and I guess, fly my kids here or see my. That was not going to be me. I needed to see them a lot. Gotcha. I needed to be, and I still didn't get.
And they were young, relatively young than they are now. I mean, we're talking early 20s, late teens now.
Yeah. But that was, and that became the priority. Now the value became that I got to incubate a little bit more. I got to reimagine the art I was making, and what I wanted to accomplish with it, and how I wanted to monetize it, and how I wanted to, I've learned more about filmmaking. When I made Nine Divine, I learned a ton of filmmaking in a year. But in the past 8 years,
it was more like a crash course, you would say.
Yeah.
At the time,
I learned that that I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. There are people that know better than me, and I got super comfortable working with them. So now, I'm just stunned. I know I just keep. I was talking to my wife about this idea of pros and hobbyists, and one of the things we said is a sign that an artist or a maker or just anybody in any field is a hobbyist, is if they are not working with people that are better than them. Like a pro, whether it's sports pro or a business pro, who wants to be the best one? I know.
Who doesn't want to be the best one is what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying, who wants to be the best guy in the room? Who wants to be the smartest guy in the room? If I'm the smartest guy in the room, if I'm working on a project and it becomes clear in some way, I think I probably know more about what's happening here on this set than anybody else here. Then not only am I bored, I'm disappointed with myself.
And it becomes hubris. And it could fail. Do you think?
Well, No.
I mean, what you're saying is that if you're not aware of that happening?
No, yes. If you're not aware of that happening, then it is.
Right.
But if that happens, if I'm working on a project and I'm not, unless it's with children or something, or then I'm I got to get out of here. I'm in the wrong place, and I've found that consistently in dealing, working on projects with people. Sometimes I worked on a project 2 weekends ago. Yeah, 2 weekends ago. No, last weekend. Was it last weekend? I think it was 2 weekends ago. It doesn't matter. But a friend of mine, Phyllis Jackson, she's an awesome friend of mine. I think she's a talented actor. I've worked with her as an actor. She and her husband, Joshua Jackson, she wanted to direct a short film. So I wrote a short film for her to direct. And she wanted me to play the guy in it. I played the guy in it. I went and worked on a film. I got to work with a new DP. from Charleston, a guy named Edward Gwynn, who's amazing. I got to work with some people they brought from Atlanta. We went down to Charleston, South Carolina. We shot at my son's apartment. We spent a day shooting this little movie with an awesome actor from Atlanta that Phyllis cast. I mean, my wife went down. We kind of did the little producing. We weren't producing. We were just having fun with Phyllis and Joshua. They were producing.
Yeah.
I just acted, and Emily helped kind of coordinate the production stuff. It was awesome. It was fun. It was hobbyist in the sense that I would have done that just because I liked them. But it was pro in that I got to work with a new DP that I'd never worked for, Edward Gwynn. It was pro, and then I got to, as a producer, because I'm really, a lot of what I do now is producing, I got to put who I think is a talented director, Phyllis. She got to drive the whole
bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joshua, her husband, got to production coordinate and assistant direct, and I mean, to me that was pro because it was kind of like it felt like people on my team were getting some reps in. I was getting to act. I haven't acted in a long time, and it was a complicated kind of way of being funny. And I don't know if it was entirely successful. We'll see when the film's finished. But it was just kind of awesome. It was like a great experience. But again, was it pro? Was it hobby? I don't know. But I do know that the sense that, you know, probably I'm the most experienced person on that set. Like I've been on more sets than other people, I think, on that set. But it wasn't like I'm the smartest person here or I have nothing to learn or nothing to benefit. There was a difference.
It's really interesting you brought this up. I just recorded. It's not out yet. It's yesterday. A couple things happened. Tuesday afternoon, I just had to get out of the studio after being in here all the time by myself. You know, that for one is as an artist, as a visual artist, that bubble can be suffocating.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and hung out with a friend of mine who is just, you know, pretty hardcore about creativity and being a process. And we talked about some ways of staying fresh and how he's a musician and how the challenges of working with a band and working with other people, working with yourself, and there's some give and take. I get to control a lot of that. He doesn't get a lot of control with that. There's a lot of he likes to use the term "fucks me up." My band member fucks me up all the time. And what it made me think about, and as I went in and recorded yesterday's vlog, is I thought about back to film. Is I had an experience with Lars von Trier's Five Obstructions when I was in graduate school.
I love that movie.
And I always go back to that.
Yeah.
Is that, and I think this is kind of what you're talking about, is like I go into the studio and I humbly saying, I've never made this before. What parameters can I give myself to force me into a situation that I'm not comfortable in? And what could possibly be the return of that? And you don't quite know if it was successful or not. Back to the idea of being professional. That's a real interesting idea. It's like, I think if you're professional, you're never comfortable.
I was going to say that. I was going to build on what you were saying, yes, and that, and just say another sign of a pro is that they are self-critical in ways that are productive. So they're self-constructive criticism. Hobbyists think their stuff's awesome. I mean, I've made some stuff that's awesome, you know, that I think is legitimately awesome. I think there are moments of unbecoming that are just awesome, you know. There are also some that aren't so awesome. And if we're going to have a real conversation about that movie, I'll go there.
Yeah.
We'll go into, and I don't think it's just hype and self-promotion. I think some people are convinced that the stuff they do is just great. Like, I don't show people Night Divine now. My wife, Emily, has not seen Night Divine. And the reason is because my acting is kind of hammy and not good, and my directing is clumsy, and my writing, you know, the things I did on it, that's 23-year-old Chris doing that.
Sure.
And he's, and again.
But there is some, but you agree that there's some worth in revisiting those things at a certain point. but not at a posterior. No,
I mean, I
because
don't know what
recently,
it would be nostalgia for me.
no,
That
exactly.
might be,
Okay.
um,
Because
but
what
there's
recent
nothing.
I just posted a video on Instagram of like one of my first videos that I
Uh-huh.
made, and it's bad, but it was one of those things like, man, I wanted to. It's kind of it's like the big. The before and after type thing.
Yeah.
So there's some redeeming qualities in it.
Oh, sure. I'm
But
sure there's
it's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not. It was. But you're talking about pros, and I think it has to do with also being a true artist. This idea of being, and I think that comes along with that being a pro and being a truly artist.
Well, and-
Wait. Is the ability to be self-critical, and I think it sometimes can be a curse.
I'm not talking about like the toxic kind of, the self destruction that I know some artists do. Like they will either sabotage their own work or they're never happy.
Okay.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying being able to be smartly critical, and it comes down to this. I'll say this too: pros serve an audience.
Yes.
Hobbyists expect the audience to serve them. So in my situation, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out what does the audience want, and based on that, what can I give them? I can't give them everything they want, nor do I think that's healthy. At the same time, how many times have you encountered an art event where the artists were upset that nobody came, or worse, there are people there and the artists thanked the audience for their support. This drives me nuts.
How often? You're asking me?
Yeah,
That's not a rhetorical question. A
Well,
lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
It's like we're just so glad somebody came because now we're valid and now we matter. What about, like, if you're serving up something good, why shouldn't they come? Like, my.
But there's people are going to think that's a little bit of arrogance, though, right?
No.
But you don't think so?
No. Here's why it's not arrogant. My wife and my favorite restaurant, we eat there twice a week. We can't keep ourselves out of it. Is the amazing Texas Roadhouse. This is the best restaurant on the planet.
I hate that place.
It is so good. There's nothing not good. You can eat healthy. You can eat decadent. The Texas Roadhouse. This is not sponsoring.
And it's all under $50, right?
Yeah, it's cheap. It's awesome. I've never walked into Texas Roadhouse, and the kid that's standing there, wanting to feed me rolls, thanks me for coming there. They've never said, "Oh God, we're so glad you came to Texas Roadhouse." You know why? Because there's tons of people there, and they say, "How many in your party?" And me and Emily push by them and go to the bar because we sit at the bar because you don't have to wait. It's always crowded. It's always busy. When we, the server says, "Is your food okay?" And we say, "Yeah, it's awesome." But the server doesn't say, "Thank you so much. I'm going to go tell the chef that you guys loved the steak he cooked." Because this
is a very interesting perspective.
He's like, because he's back there, and he was like peeking out to see who was going to order the ribeye. And he's watching right now to watch your first slice into his ribeye see if it's good. No. He's making a bunch of other ribeyes, and he's like texting with his girlfriend trying to get home. Why aren't artists like that? If I've made something and I've invited you to come partake in it as an audience member, you should be able to trust that I care enough about you to not be selling you, putting something out there that's crappy, or that I think you're just lucky to have. You're lucky to have me. I think the arrogance is the artist saying, the audience is here to serve me. You're here because I need support. What about you're here because I offer value that you want to pay for? That's how everything else works. That's how the movie business works. There's no, I mean, one of the reasons you ask why film, one of the reasons why I love film is because it's actually a business where good pays off. Like, I'm telling you, I'm very close to closing some major funding on my next film project, and it's a $2 million movie, and that means the movie needs to make about $6 or $7 million to be considered profitable, be a profitable movie. That's a lot of people that need to spend money in some way, shape, or form on this film.
Yeah.
Um,
It's also a lot of money. I mean,
yeah.
I know in the movie business that's a small
No,
amount
that's
of
not
money.
a lot.
But to
But
me,
think of
you
it-
and me, that's a lot of money.
But how? So my product better be like something that $8 million worth of revenue can, that can generate. So, it needs to be entertaining, and I need to have good people working on it. Probably needs to have some famous people in it, because that helps movies. I mean, it is actually it is art that is, it makes no apologies for being transactional. I went to see the Kevin Hart movie Night School the other night. I go to see everything. I also,
I know you do.
I see super artsy movies.
You'll see them all. You'll see them all.
And then I'll see those, and I came out of that movie. I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. I think it's funny. It had some laughs. I had a good time. Harriet Whitaker went with me and Emily to see it. It was fun, and it did what it needed to do. And it'll probably do well. Kevin Hart's popular.
Yes, it sells out arenas. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I
He's
mean,
got
so
that following
that'll make its
too.
money, and it had some kind of interesting things about teaching and learning and life, and yeah, it was good. It's fine.
But it's not going to change the world.
It's not going to change the world, but it was a good way to pass 2 hours, and I'm glad it got the money from me, and the popcorn that I paid for was great. So when I go to see a play, that's not the way it is. It's like I walked into a place and they're all orphans that want me to adopt them. They're like, please like this, please like. Thank you so much. Gosh, we were afraid no one.
Why is that? Why? Where's the disconnect? Because an art shows is very similar. It's that same kind of thing. It's like, oh my God, we're having an opening. Well, even if you don't sell anything, the crowd.
Do you know who the designer Aaron Draplin is?
Yes.
Okay. What do you think the crowds are like at an Aaron Draplin giving a talk? It's like a rock.
Yeah.
He's a rock star.
Yeah.
There's merchandise tables that are 12 feet long.
Yeah.
Stacked to the ceiling with the coolest stuff you've ever seen. Cooler than any band merchandise I've ever seen.
Sure.
And then Draplin gets up there and basically gives a TED talk and riles you up and just shows you pictures of stuff he saw at a
on his
antique
vacation.
store. Yeah. And then you leave like, I'm going to go make great design. That was great. And I got a cool t-shirt and a trucker hat. That guy's providing some value. Now, he's also doing graphic design for companies and different things. If you've ever seen Field Notes, those little notebooks,
right. Yep.
he kind of created that, or the design element of that. Maybe even the concept of that was his. But, I mean, he doesn't apologize. He doesn't come in and say, oh, so thank you so much for coming out. He's like there, in your face, let's do this. And so I think the reason why that is because art, visual arts, dance.
I think if anybody that's consuming this, they're probably pretty aware by now that what I mean when we talk about art.
Okay.
What it means to do that. I've written a lot about it, and so yeah. So go ahead.
I think part of it is
I know what you're talking.
We're making art for each other. So there's kind of like this thing where we have to. It's more like it's within the community. We're kind of trying to impress each other, or maybe sometimes one up each other, or hey, what do you think of how I did this little thing? Oh, I really love. And we've shifted the idea of the audience to other artists, and I think we do that if you study art of any kind, theater, anything. You start trying to please your professors. The idea of the curator, the gatekeeper, is the person who needs to be pleased. So I think we do that in our communities.
Yeah, I think the system does that as well.
But
to an extent.
I was on the board of a really awesome theater in Greenville, South Carolina, and I remember at a board meeting one time saying, they were talking about something to try to get people to see some play, and I was like, they don't have to do anything to get people to come to the Bilo Center and see monster trucks. They don't have to do anything. They sell those things out. And at the time, I was a teacher, and some parent had given me monster truck tickets, and like as a teacher gift favor or whatever. They said okay. Oh yeah. Back to monster trucks.
Back to monster trucks.
So when I was a teacher, one of the parents is sort of a nice thing for the teacher. This mom, I think, gave me tickets to take my kids to see the monster truck. So I'm not aware of that world, and it was pretty loud, but it was cool. It was interesting. It was entertaining. But we were talking about how are we going to get people, and I think what was said is a fellow board member had said people don't go out and do stuff anymore.
Right.
They just don't go out
Right.
anymore. They stay home and watch TV or whatever.
Net binge on Netflix.
And I was like, but they do go out for the monster trucks. Why?
Did you find that answer yet?
They do go out for Disney on Ice? Well, let's start there and let's start breaking all that stuff down.
Okay.
And I don't want to do that here because it could get really tedious. But certainly one of it is because the people that put on the monster truck show,
they know their audience.
They know their audience. Here's another thing. I have a friend of mine. He was in one of my movies. He's an ex-professional wrestler. His wrestling name is Brody Chase. He was the Great American Scream Machine. Brody's never studied theater. He's never studied literature. He's a big fan of movies and he's an impeccable taste. But when he tells me about wrestling, like, and I'm talking about the wrestling, the fake
WWF,
wrestling, yeah. And he did shows with Dwayne Johnson and everybody. He worked with everybody. I told him the other day, he was telling me about a whole storyline they had going one time in a wrestling match. And I was like, that took a whole semester to learn what you just told me of college, learning about Greek tragedy. What you just said, every element you're describing,
the heel and all
is
that
a
stuff,
part is a part of Aristotle.
Yeah.
So one thing that these big popular entertainments are doing are they're recognizing primal things that people just know and like. And we do like stories, and we do have something deep inside of us that wants to see relate to a character. We want to see the character struggle, and we want to see them overcome or fail with a reason behind it. So I think we just got to go back to that. Yes, I do think some people are lazy and uneducated and incurious about the world around them, and so popular, easy entertainment is fine. But you know what? I don't have to take care of those people because I live in the world of smart art people, and so I'm trying to fix them. And their problem is they're making stuff for each other. They're making stuff for their community of friends. Another thing about a pro, this is a sure way to see if somebody's a pro versus a hobbyist. Hobbyists tend to be a little nervous or suspect of anything that has to do with business or commerce. Pros aren't. Like if I said, Kendall, what would you sell me that piece there for in the studio? And you might say, well, it's a special piece. I really don't want to sell it. Or that's kind of a work in progress. You don't want that. You want this. But at some point you would say, well, I want to get $800 for that. I don't know if that's too rich for your blood or whatever. And you might say, we're friends. I'll give you a $200 discount. You can take it for $600. But you would have there wouldn't be some weird thing where you're like, just take it, man. I made it to be enjoyed.
No.
Or like, no, I don't sell my art. It stays there. It's for me. You,
Yeah.
you wouldn't do that,
No.
but
No.
how many people do that?
All the
I see
time.
that all
And
the
I think,
time.
that's you brought up a really great point. And that's something that I had to come to terms with probably, I guess, about 3 months ago when I said I was going to do this. Like, it's got to, like, Faith and I had this conversation, and even yesterday when we were going through the website, she was like, "Oh, that's too cheap." I was like, or that's it's got to go out the door. It's got to go. It's got to go.
Right.
I've had it too long. It's got to go.
Yeah.
It's like that's the way it's got to, the way it's got to be. And yeah, so that having to say, like, look, I am no longer just making it to make. I'm making it to get out the door. I have something to say with everything. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like the message and the content of the work is important, and it'll carry on once it's gone.
Right.
But it's got to go.
Yeah. Right.
Somebody needs it in their living room or in their bar or restaurant, because that's what those other people need to see when they walk in.
I was talking to another actor friend of mine, and we were talking about why we don't do theater. We don't do live theater. And we're just talking about, as grown-ups, too much time. So much time in rehearsal. And you don't, if you're getting paid, you're not getting paid enough for the time it takes to make something good. So it's just inefficient. And we're just having this. Can you imagine I know some theater people I would never have that conversation with. Because they'd be aghast. They would just be like, what are you talking about? We're talking about, you're saying you wouldn't do, Macbeth because it just takes too much time? And I would say, absolutely. Because my time is valuable. I should be paid for my time. If there's commerce involved, there should be some angle. I mean, there are times when I don't get paid or do something for fun or to help somebody out. But for the most part, my time is valuable. I should be paid for it. So yeah, if you said we could do Macbeth and you can play Macbeth, I would say, what are you paying me? You would say, nothing. We're just doing it because it's Macbeth. I would say, well, I'm not.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not going to come see your version.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Macbeth
You're talking
either.
about Columbia, and just to try to make a parallel to that. I'm a big music fan here in Columbia, and I know a lot of musicians here in Columbia, especially in the more rock and roll scene. And I have these conversations or hear these conversations with them a lot. You get to a certain point here in Columbia, but you're not making a living. They could play out in South Carolina every weekend and still not make a living. Where they have to get to a point, but if you refer them to the scene, they're established. They've made it. But in the realm of their art or how they're seeing things, no, we haven't.
Oh, that's totally me as a film producer in Greenville. I think people would recognize and respect me as a filmmaker in Greenville, but until my movies are paying my bills, but here's why I separate pro. So you can be pro and not get paid. And what I say is, I'm trying to do this in my own life. If somebody asks me what I do, or they're asking me, because I do freelance writing, I do all sorts of stuff. But I'm going to start saying I get paid to write, I get paid to act, I get paid to whatever. Because some people say, well, professional means you get paid. You're a professional baseball player if you get paid.
Right.
Well, it is your profession. I guess you're getting paid for it. But I don't want to discourage people that are like struggling to pay and justify their art. Like, it's more about your ambition. It's more about the ambition and the realistic. I'm not. My ambition is not to win an Oscar. I won't. I'm fine with that. But I'd like to do business inside the film industry. I'd like to make some money doing it and get paid and get to work with. I'd say this all the time. I just want to work with the best people in the world that I can persuade to work with me, because
And pay your bills.
that's what's fun to me. I want to work with awesome people doing ambitious stuff. But yeah, I don't mean pro hobbyists like all pros get paid, because like people get paid to make corporate videos, and I've never seen a corporate video that was any good.
Right.
I mean, I don't
So
get into gear and
so what you're are you suggesting there's a middle ground?
oh well, making a living as a musician, then yeah, you got to have a band, maybe two bands. You might even have to have a third cover band, because you just got to get paid on wedding Saturdays.
Sure.
You know, you might need to teach. You might need to teach drums. You might have to turn your garage into a drum lab for high school kids trying to learn to play drums. You might have to go play with a church on a Sunday.
Or you don't, and you have a side job and you play out every weekend or whatever. Or doing your, like you have your two bands or your one band or whatever. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I would say that if your job, well, this is hard. If your job, if you, maybe this is what it is. I also think pros have a thing where they're trying to get somewhere within the profession, and when they have their shot, they're going to take it. Like I do know some people that have quote unquote day jobs, and have had moments when they could have taken their shot and they didn't. They kept the day job because of security or the healthcare or whatever. But that to me is that's a problem with the ambition. I think you do need to be able to, depending on the level of your ambition, what you're striving for as a pro, you do need to have a moment when you're like, okay, I am quitting the bank. Quitting. And here we go. And not do that stupidly, not do that foolishly or
whatever,
uninformed. One of my favorite people in the world is a guy that was a banker for many, many years. And he started a film festival in Spartanburg. It was awesome. And one day he told me, he said, hey man, I'm just letting you know, I'm quitting the bank. I was like, oh really? What are you going to do? And he goes, I'm going to film school at NYU. I got in. I was like, what? Yeah, grad school in film. I'm going to take classes with Spike Lee and, you know. I was like, really? And he goes, yeah. And he went. He did that for 3 years. And now he's running, you know, I won't say the company he's working for, but he's like a real guy in film. But man, think about those years that he was just sacking away money. He has a kid, he has a wife. They were making a plan, waiting to make their move. And when the opportunity came, in fact, he had gotten into Columbia and NYU. They were both wanting him for their grad program because he was older. He was in his 40s. He had a financial background. Seems like an interesting candidate for them from the South. And his mom was sick, I think, or she passed away or something. She eventually passed away, but he had to defer a year. He had to say no to that dream one more year because he had to take care of family. He had to be with family. Again, he had to keep his mouth closed, go to that office every day, go do commercial. I think he worked in, I don't know, but he had to do that job for a whole another year. And luckily, both schools said, yeah, we'll hold a spot for you for next year. So he did. And now he's really doing it. He was just working on Ethan Hawke's movie Blaze. Mm-hmm. Pretty much on the ground producing with Ethan, for Ethan. So, you know, I don't want to like be too like, I know that I'm going to say lots of things that I'll probably regret or be like, I didn't really mean that, or I just changed my mind because I reserve the right to change my mind. But it's important to me to like think about this pro hobby thing because it's so much a part of my identity and so more it's connected to my sense of hope. Like if because I may never make it as a filmmaker. You know, I may never go to any next level. It may just not work out for me. It's not enough to want it. It's not enough to have a good plan or have good connections or anything. It's not enough to make good product. You know, all the people that are successful and they say, you just have to keep doing it and one day it'll work out. Only half of that's true. You do have to keep doing it. But it working out is not guaranteed.
No, but what makes it work out? Is it luck?
A part of it. I mean, you can't make it without keeping going.
Sure, that's.
So you have to do that, but you're just not. You have to make super smart decisions at critical moments. You have to make decisions that are smart, and who knows if they're smart. You have to be calm. You can't get distracted. You know, I think this too about hobbyists and pros with gatekeepers, or with you know, the head of the film festival or the head of the arts commission or whoever. Pros use those relationships very strategically. Yeah. Hobbyists think of those relationships as love. If it just warms your heart to the point of tears that the South Carolina Film Commissioner comes to your short film screening, then you're a hobbyist. But if the South Carolina Film Commissioner, who I know and is an awesome person, comes to your short film screening, that is an opportunity to do business. So we have to realize that. Like, I know people that cozy up to every film festival programmer they possibly can. You know, everybody that's, you know, anybody. I'm gonna be friends with them, and then they talk to them or they watch their films and I like that, and they just melt because this gatekeeper liked this thing. I'm just like, well, what is that gatekeeper doing for you? My biggest beef with film festivals, that's a total another topic, but they charge ticket. They make people buy a ticket to see my movie.
And you paid to get in.
And well, they usually give you 2 passes, but my cast and crew does.
Sure, right.
and then I don't get any of that money.
Well, you paid to enter the festival too.
Well, yeah. In some cases, yeah. You pay to get in. They charge tickets, and so to me that says, oh, okay. So what the transaction that's happening is that you're giving me self-esteem. You're giving me a sense that I'm successful. You're making me feel good about myself. Well, I don't need self-esteem for my work. I get self-esteem in other places.
So is that it? Is that the yeah, exactly. Is that the crux on the pro thing too?
Maybe so.
I think so. I think you're right. I think I feel, this is my paranoia, that I may be viewed as an asshole because that's how I see things. Or look, I mean, it's kind of
me too.
It's like, I didn't get the residency, so I mean, whatever, you know, it's.
That's strategic use, though, of the gatekeeper, though. So I want to know why I didn't get it, what I could do better next time, because I want the residency for various reasons, whatever it is. You know, so that is important to know. But I can't get crushed, nor if I get the residency, can I act like, you know, I just got a new girlfriend, you know? I had a good note. It was on the tip of my tongue. It's on my phone. Oh, okay. Here's a good one. Okay. Oh, we are. I had this epiphany.
Okay, you said you had an epiphany.
Yeah, I realized that that pros had hobbies outside of art.
Okay.
And hobbyists, let's put it this way: pros have friends and communities that exist outside of art. you have friends that aren't artists. You do things. Like, for me and my wife, we go to Texas Roadhouse and eat peanuts.
Drink beer.
We seriously, we go in there and like, none of our tribe is here. We don't care because the roadkill is like the best thing
Is it called roadkill?
Yeah, the ground beef, the chopped steak.
Is it called roadkill?
Yeah, roadkill. I know all the look, but you have a life away from your art. I found that a lot of hobbyists don't. Their whole life is all their friends who do their thing, and they all hang out with their friends, and they don't, because what's feeding that is community, which is awesome. I'm not saying that community theater is bad, or just being in a band just because your friends are in the band is bad. That's actually kind of awesome. That's one of the beautiful things about art and creativity, that we can just do it for community.
But there's a difference.
There's a difference. If you're pro, it's like some of my favorite people in the world are people I work with on set and make movies with. Favorite people. I do socialize with those people, a few of them, outside of that, just because I like them as a person. And if they weren't in film and I wasn't in film, we'd still be friends.
Sure.
But for the most part, to stay just healthy, I got to get away from that stuff. I don't want to be around film people all the time. I don't want to be talking.
Yeah,
art
I
all
think
the
you're
time.
absolutely right. I agree.
What's the thing that we talk when we talk, because we're friends outside of art making? The main thing I keep saying to you is, let's go ride bikes.
Right. And I ride bikes all the time. So,
I do too up there.
Yeah, I know, right.
But it's most of the time, if you're coming up, it's either where are we going to go get a drink, where are we going to go ride bikes. I'd be happy to take you to Texas Roadhouse if you want to for dinner.
We're not talking about what movie we're going to go watch. And
that
screen,
will come up in conversation.
And screen and critique.
Oh, and if we watch a movie, it's going to be some kind of...
we'll sit around and listen to records or something.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah.
And I don't play music, and I wish I could. But, I thought of something back there I want to go back to. I have a friend from college, and he has a company in L.A. Two friends from college are working on it. One's more the business partner, one's the artist. But he's a guitar player, and it's called McSwain. His name is Stephen McSwain. McSwain Guitars.
McSwain Guitars.
Okay, so what he does is he builds custom guitars.
Right.
But they're just crazy. They're all playable because he wants them to be played. But they go to all these shows and they just do trippy, crazy guitars. Like some of them custom, like somebody calls in and says, McSwain, McSwain guitars. Yeah, just pull up images. Okay, so it's all sorts of crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Cool.
so part of that is just kind of kitschy, crafty fun. Like, oh man, you go to some show and they've got this crazy, just tripped out, amazing guitar, and you have somebody who probably has 10 guitars, and you get them one. And it's cool. And part of it is it sits there and it looks cool, and part of it you pick up and play it. Right? So I'm wondering from you, is that person an artist? Are they a musician? Where does that fit in your spectrum and understanding of like art making?
I think that's a great question. I think there's definitely a craftsman for sure. But
yeah, because they're built from nothing.
Yeah, but when you're with that type of thing, that one-of-a-kind piece, and it's not mass-produced,
right?
It's still functional. That's a piece of art. That's a functional piece of art.
Well, if you own that, would you want to play it or would you want to look at it?
It's one of those things that, you would want to have it on a wall in your living room. But an amp sitting right next to the couch that you possibly just could plug it in, because if somebody walk in and say, "Does that play?" and you're like, "Hell yeah, it plays." Listen, So I definitely think I think that's a great example of doing what you love without compromise, making a living. And ultimately, that's something that's my ambition. That's something that I want to do. You know, or
Yeah.
I want to. That's where I want to arrive eventually. And I think for me personally, what's held me back is just, you know, just like we were talking about earlier, is the family and just being dad and breadwinner. And when we've come to, and Faith and I have made some great financial decisions in the last several years that right now we're okay to do this. But there is still pressure to have a certain amount of success so I can continue to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's like the thing I like about those guitars is just what you said. It's like if you talk to Steven about that, he'd probably say, I don't even know where my hobby ends and my work begins.
And that's something that's something I make work about.
Yeah.
Is that losing oneself between work and play.
Yeah.
Of how it can be a good thing and a bad thing. It's something that I'm fascinated by, that ability to do that. But what clients do for him, and what I've lucky enough to have some clients that have done this with me, is they come into the studio or they're at a show and they say, man, I really like that one. I like what you did there, and I like that. Now I want you to take all three and make another one with all those things, and I'll pay you for it. And it's like, done.
Yeah.
Certain amount of freedom, but still there's some, you know, there's some direction in there. That's what I can do.
I also think you're so good at drawing, but I think there's something with wearables, with T-shirts, with other kinds of wearables.
When we put a plug, there's our
Posters.
first one run of T-shirts is in the works right now.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, it's
because I just want to throw $25 at that.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
I mean, that's just easy, low-hanging fruit. I know the kind of thing that would be on.
And I'm a huge, Faith hates it, but I'm a T-shirt guy. Like that's
Right.
I just, you know, you probably, if you haven't seen it, like my vlog, I'm wearing the Greed Idiom Savant.
Oh no,
shirt.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I'm
yet.
like on half of them. I'm
Oh,
wearing
good.
it because it's a great T-shirt for one.
Yeah.
But then the color, I love the color. So yeah, it's but yeah, those are things I think about, and that's, you know,
That's caring about the audience. Though. That's what I get back to is caring about the audience. I've had so
and
many
stickers. Like there's a run of stickers happening. I love stickers. I've always loved stickers. You know, that's something everybody would
Yeah.
something you put on the back of your
Yeah.
car. I mean, I'm that guy. I'm that guy.
You know what? We had this realization with our films that we were reluctant because it didn't feel like us, but it was the realization that some people wanted to come to an event around a film. Like they wanted a red carpet thing. They wanted to get a glass of wine handed to them. They wanted to pay us $50 to come see a movie because of the event we created around it. In fact, they wanted me to like be wearing a suit or a tuxedo. They wanted to have that experience of something like Hollywood.
Okay.
I don't do what I do for that at all. Like nothing
Right.
in that
Yeah.
appeals to me, but people, that's a way that people appreciate. Like one time I told somebody, I was like, I think he had given to like a Kickstarter or something. And we were talking, and he goes, you're not the most famous filmmaker, but you're famous to me, and you talk to me. We're chatting on Facebook, and I can just send you a Facebook message, and we can just talk about a movie. And that's super cool. I'm like, yeah, that's super cool. Like, there is something about that relationship that's valuable to him.
Sure.
And I hadn't really thought of that. And there's a way to respect the audience, to put on a show, and not, like, the show is that it's about me, but for me, it's about the audience. And I see people mess that up all the time, and I can just smell it.
Yeah,
when I walk into a
you
thing,
can.
and
Right.
it's about them doing this thing for themselves. I just know it.
Yeah. I hate openings. I hate my openings. I hate other people's openings.
But that means, to me, that means you could have a great opening. That if you,
But I didn't need to be there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's how I think of
You
it.
you
I'd like
need
to be
make,
invisible. If I could be invisible, I would.
but I would say the opening, if you can understand that the opening is part of the way that audience is
I see what you're
consuming
saying.
your work.
I see it. I get
And
it. I
they,
get what you're
even
right,
if
and you're
you're there
right.
in your flip flops and your overalls, they're there for that.
Yeah.
That's part of their entertainment in this experience. And part of it is that they're sitting there looking at something on the wall that you made, and you're standing next to them, and they're saying, having those dumb conversations where they're saying, "Did you mean this?" And you're like, "Yes," or
yeah. Or,
or
whatever.
whatever
Sure.
it needs to be.
Yeah. Right.
Like you're having that. That's
And I
part
think
of their the transaction there.
we were talking about music too, and my friends that are musicians, like they hate this night. The ones that are on the road, they say those are the easiest shows to do when you're on the road because you basically show up, set up, rock and roll, and then you got to, and then you choose to sit around the rest of the night and drink and pass out in the hotel, and you don't know anybody, so it's a little different.
Yeah.
So but an in-town show or people that are a show where there's a lot of fans there, it's the same kind of thing. They know, and I've heard them talk about this. It's like, although they hate before they go on, they understand that that's a part of the experience they're creating.
Yeah, yeah. Because they say, those people tell their friends, "I'm friends with that guy. I had a beer with that guy." Right. The guy in the band, we were drinking a beer here. Like 2 months ago, we were standing right here drinking a beer, me and that guy. And I'm not going to judge my judgment would say that's a dumb reason to like art for the celebrity aspect. But if I'm going to be a pro, I have to, on some level, acknowledge that some of this is a whatever celebrity aspect of it, that they want to feel like they're having an experience with the artist that's unique and special. I want to say this because my wife told me this too. She was quite eloquent about it. She said, somebody's a pro. She's a writer. She said, somebody's a pro or somebody's a hobbyist if they say, "I just love writing. I love it." And she goes, "Because writing sucks." She's the best writer I've ever met. Yeah. She's amazing. She goes, actually, she said, the starting thing is fun because it's imagination. You're trying to think what you're going to write, maybe. Yeah. And the ending, having written, is rewarding. It's fun. I love it. I finished. But the middle is a grind. It's miserable. It's a discipline. You have to read crappy stuff you wrote and think you're talentless. It's the hardest thing in the world. And it's not about, this is another thing Emily said, pro writers don't look at the writing as a self-expression, as I'm just going to express whatever I feel. They look at it as, I feel this, I have these thoughts to express, and now I'm going to craft it.
Exactly.
I'm going to turn this into something. So just freewheeling, blogging, journaling. I woke up today and saw a bird, and this is what it meant. That's not crafty writing, and crafty writing is actually pro writing, and it's miserable to do. Well, she actually says it's actually ordering and making sense of the world, of your inner self and what's going on with you and your experiencing. It's an ordering. It's it's not just I'm speaking my truth. Okay, there's a way to speak your truth in an ordered, professional, story narrative kind of way. But a writer we're all trying to speak our truth, but how are you speaking it? How are you ordering it? How are you collecting it? How are you putting it together? That film I talked about, writing for Phyllis, that I acted in, the whole thing came out of an experience I had with a friend who was expressing his desire to he wasn't saying he was getting into drugs, but he really wanted to try LSD, and he just wanted to experiment with drugs. And I was thinking, why? Why would you want to do that? And he was just talking to like about this amazing thing that he never had experienced an experimental with drugs, and I was just mulling around in my mind. Part of me thinking, well, maybe that's a cool thing. Maybe that's, I don't know. What do I think about that? What do I think about a grown-ass man like just deciding I'm just going to start doing drugs? So the script that I wrote is about a guy who goes to buy drugs. Now, the guy is totally different than this person I was having the conversation with. His situation is totally different. But I crafted a story about a guy that goes to the place, gets with a drug dealer. He's just saying, I want to buy some drugs. What are you looking for? I don't know. I don't like smoking drugs. I don't like needle drugs. What do you got? She's like, I could sell you some Molly. It's like a little tablet. He's like, as long as I don't have to smoke it. What does it do? It just, you get high. It's cool. And they start talking about his divorce. And they start talking about his family. And this change comes over the conversation in this thing where this woman the young woman who's trying to sell the guy drugs realizes, she just says, well, listen, dude, I'm not going to sell you drugs. And he's like, why? And she's like, I don't feel good about it. I'm not going to sell you drugs today. And he's dejected and he leaves sad. He didn't get to buy his drugs. And at that moment, this other guy walks out of the bushes and says, hey, what happened? What did he figure out you were a cop? What went bad? It's the whole time she's been a cop. This is all a bust.
Really?
But she let him go. And what I realized was I had an experience that got in my head. I was thinking about it. The absurdity of somebody just starting out doing drugs. But actually what I was doing is when is grace the answer? When is like because that was a graceful act. She could have taken his money and busted him. And there was something that changed in her, this undercover cop, that made her decide, I'm letting him go. And it had something to do with their conversation about hopes, dreams, family, disappointments, everything. Something about that tiny little brief connection they had where she decided, you're free. He doesn't know that he was even in peril. But she gave him something that he actually needed. She gave him empathy, and she gave him grace. That's what that movie's about. Now, I wasn't thinking about any of that when I was acting in it. I don't even think I fully realized what it was about until we were kind of there doing it, and I started thinking about it and watching the movie, as we were doing it. But to me, that's actually what an artist does.
Yeah. It's funny you bring this, we'll wrap this up with that, because it's funny you said that. My next guest, one of the things that we're going to talk about is defining grace and what that is, because he's a musician and what he does musically, and there's this play between just being a Christian and indulging in vices, and so yeah.
Well, you can't have forgiveness. You got to sin to get saved is the Maria McKee song.
Yeah,
on that topic.
That's right. All right, Chris, thanks for being here. We hope we covered up our pro. I think we made some really deep dives into these ideas, what it means to be a pro and make art, and I appreciate you coming all the way down.
Any comments, like as this is posted or however you get this out there, if people want to take issue or throw their weight around and tell me I'm wrong, do it. I'll try to keep up with them and respond to them.
Cool. All right.
Start more conversations.
Cool. Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.